Yeah, so Sam Wiley and Vincent Bergeron, welcome to the 5-minute update. You guys are LES, which is the sponsoring organization for this August podcast, has an annual meeting coming up in, say, a month or so out in San Francisco. Looks like it should be very well attended in a packed program. You guys are heading up a keynote, I'll call it a keynote panel. I don't know exactly how many people you have. It sounds like you have 2. But give us a hint what that panel is about. And then as we pop in and out, we'll talk about the annual meeting itself. But why don't one of you take it away, and I'll freely interrupt, as you should do.
Yeah, so I'm really just the organizer. My company, PatSnap, is sponsoring the panel. But I did reach out to Vincent because we needed someone who has got the sort of right stuff to lead a very sophisticated panel like this, and he's also a member of the LES board. So I thought he was the perfect person. But the idea behind the panel was to bring together really Silicon Valley leaders who've seen a lot in IP and technology, and kind of keeping with the theme of commercializing technology, could really tell some stories that might inspire the crowd. So we got Pat Patnode, who's the head of licensing for GE, Shane O'Reilly, who's the head of licensing for Meta, and Karine Immergluck, who is the leader of the Office of Technology Licensing at Stanford. So I honestly couldn't think of 3 better people to possibly lead this panel. And then Vincent, maybe you could kind of talk about what you're hoping to do actually moderating it.
Well, hold on, let me interrupt.
Yeah.
Let me interrupt. So Vincent, we're going to put you on the spot since you're a board member for the Licensing Executive Society. In 2 sentences, what is that society?
Well, the Licensing Executive Society is actually an organization for everything involving the business of intellectual property in general. I mean, there are multiple organizations out there about, patent law and patent attorneys and international associations where they'll discuss treaties. But this one is about the business of IP, all the licensing of the technology that's being developed, and all people involved around this business side of it. So you'll get everyone from attorneys, engineers, people from the industry, people from private practice, valuation firms, service providers that provide analytics tools. So it's really a diverse crowd. And
okay,
I would
just interruption. Yeah. For those of you who are watching a video, will Buddy Holly be there? Because I see there's a Buddy Holly album behind you. Yeah. Or has his time passed, so to speak?
Well, you'll see that in the crowd of LES, you have people that love technology, music, culture, and geeks like me who just enjoy talking technology in general. So yeah, you see the guitar, you see the Buddy Holly there. So
yeah, David, I don't think Buddy's going to make it. There's actually a song that sort of addresses maybe what happened to Buddy. So unfortunately, he won't be in attendance.
Okay. Could you sing that, Sam? I'm not sure.
I cannot sing that. That'd be a terrible idea, unless it was karaoke at 10 p.m. at night.
Vincent doesn't miss a beat there, though. He didn't pause 1 second. Okay, so we know who LES is. Yeah. And I should point out to the 3 people who might listen to this podcast, and all 3 of us are actually on the video right now. But in case in our cars we have a moment we actually listen to it, we are all members of LES. Yeah. So it's not new to us, but it's an exciting group. And Vincent, we'll ask you this other question. This is you're being judged on this, and by the way, your continued tenure on the board will depend on your answer. How many members approximately are there of LES? And we should point out this is a subset of the entire LES international organization. So take it away in 2 or 3 sentences.
I'm not sure about the total members we have today, because we have more and more members every day. And actually, it's something that is really
smooth answer.
Yeah, and I mean, it's true, because we had two new membership proposals this year, one for IP owners and one for emerging leaders. And actually that made the organization go in an upward trend in membership. And I know a lot of organizations out there are struggling since the pandemic with the membership. But for LES, we're on an upward trend, which is amazing. And it's due a lot to these two new programs that have been very, very popular this year.
Yeah, no, I know up here, I do work, when I'm not doing work with LES, I do work with the MIT Enterprise Forum. And it has seen over the last, and I hate to say this, 20 years, massive just decline because there's so many organizations that do entrepreneurial work now. And on the licensing side, I wouldn't say there's many quite in that area, but there are quite a few in the IP space, and of course licensing goes with it. Okay, so the topic, we'll switch over to you, Sam. The topic for, you already mentioned it once, but in case somebody's had walked out to get a sandwich while you were speaking, topic for the upcoming meeting is?
It's commercializing innovation. So it's really about exactly the stuff Vincent was just talking about, the business of IP.
Excellent. And now, let's get back. The panel, sorry, it's a keynote panel. Typically people think of keynote speakers. This is a keynote panel. What's to the extent you can remember, what's the specific title of the panel? Or close enough?
It's a long title, but then you get a sense of everything he's going to talk about. So the title is The Incredible Transformation of the IP and Licensing Practice, a journey through impressive career highlights, lesson learned the hard way, and the shape of things to come.
Is this like a Disney cartoon or what?
Yeah, sure.
It's going to be far more entertaining.
It's going to be in the metaverse, and you're going to need a headset to watch it, even in the room. And no, just kidding, of course. Okay. But I mean, it's such an impressive roster on this keynote panel that we really wanted to get like the fun stuff, the real juice of like, if you were one-on-one with one of those people having a drink, what would be the questions you would actually ask them? And so we went up with a few questions like that, like, what's the thing you're most proud about, like the most impressive career highlight that you have? Like, I want to hear about that from the head of Meta licensing. And then you probably have failed very hard at some things. So what lesson learned the hard way have you learned through time that you wish you would have learned earlier? Like, I want to know that. And then,
okay, so let's wind the clock forward. Let's pretend we're in a bar.
Yeah.
And it's now 10 o'clock. This particular keynote, I assume, is going to be Monday morning at the LES meeting. And
I think so.
We should make it October 17th or 18th. I forgot what Monday is.
Vince and I will have already sung The Day the Music Died the night before, and then we'll be at the meeting now. Okay, got it.
Okay. So okay, but let's say it's 10 o'clock in the evening after this keynote, and we don't need to do the introductions, because we all seen each other. We've had drinks. You've got just a sort of few minutes to sort of shoot the breeze. Actually, we don't have a few minutes. We'll just talk about it. What did we learn today? What did we learn in the keynote that presumably in this sort of a thought experiment happened? In the thought experiment, what did we learn in the keynote? Oh, that was a lot of words.
Are you now asking for spoilers?
Yes.
So David, one of the things that came up when we were prepping this that Vince and I were really excited about was both Shane and Pat talked about how in their careers doing IP licensing, one really interesting trend for all of us they've seen is they're being asked to contribute more to transactions that maybe IP only plays a very small role. The reason for this is that someone who's had an entire career in IP licensing often has insights into entire ecosystems. They've got a very large network. They usually know the entire business very intimately. So licensing people are often very well positioned to contribute in areas maybe that have little to do with licensing or IP. And we're really excited to hear both of them tell that story.
Okay, so that's a good answer. Vincent, you're chomping at the bit, I see. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about. And I don't want to say too much, but like Sam mentioned, the role of the IP function inside organization has changed And through time, they're going to tell us about how it just moved from something that's on the edge or something that needs to be done or something that the board doesn't really understand, but like it's there and we need to do it because everybody does it, to now being at the forefront of the business strategy as a whole, like for transactions, for how to grow, for how to get out there doing new ventures in the market. Like the IP function now has kind of merged with the business development side of things for large organizations, and that's a big shift.
And why would you so to flesh that out a bit? So on the biz dev or business development side, and I would think the business development people could equally well sit in as many of those meetings as the licensing team does. At least my experience is the biz dev folks usually have their pulse on where the business is going so that they can make the necessary connections. But where, sort of on the bigger picture side, where does this talk or this keynote fit into sort of the larger ecosystem? So say a member were to bring his or her spouse along, kicking and screaming to this panel discussion, because as exciting as it might be to us, probably not so exciting to the common layperson. What would the New York Times, for example, have to say about this talk? There we go, the paper of record.
I'll let you start, Sam.
I mean,
Nice
if I had a family member who barely understands what I do for a living come to this, I think they'd still be pretty excited to hear from people at Meta, Stanford, GE. They're some of the most important organizations on the planet. Stanford, creates some of the most important technology, and Meta and GE sort of speak for themselves. So I think anybody with even a tangential interest, I've used the word tangential a lot on this podcast.
No, you haven't. No, but you just got it in 4 times.
4 times, yeah, maybe one more.
Breath.
Someone with a very small interest in IP, but an interest in business or technology or science, I think could gain a lot from this just by virtue of the people on the panel.
Wow, that's okay. You have dodged that question beautifully. Vincent, you have now had about 45 seconds to come up with an answer.
No, I do have an answer. I just wanted to look better after Sam, so that's just
not hard to do.
Just kidding, just kidding, Sam.
Nice move.
Actually, when you look at that roster, they have been at the forefront of technologies that everybody is using on a daily basis right now. And the topics we're gonna cover are gonna touch like impressive career highlights that probably involve, like, let's say Meta in the past, the acquired companies that became super large. So I could see my wife wanting to learn at how they bought Instagram because she's using it every day. And like Stanford, if we would list all the technologies coming out of that office that actually are now used in your everyday life in GE, not even talking about everything that you do with GE technology on a daily basis. I think that these are technologies that influence the whole society. So I think that hearing about that and hearing about how it starts from an idea to being something that you use every day and all around the world, I think that's just amazing. And
okay, so let me take a shot at it. I'm thinking about this answer. For all of 45 plus 45, a minute and a half or so. Plus a little time for these sort of BS interludes, as I say, and the like. So my thought would be this, that especially when you look at Silicon Valley, but other technology centers, you could say that intellectual property, let's step away from technology per se and talk about intellectual property. We have typically, on the IP side, in a sense, been not a lagging indicator, but sort of a insurance policy added after the technology was developed and the product was formulated in the minds of the business group, the marketing folks, the biz dev, and the like. The IP folks have typically been brought in to protect the invention, practically speaking, protect the product. And on the licensing side, we have sort of months and years later been brought in to help share that technology with other parties, business partners, or conversely to bring some of their technology in. So we've sort of always played cleanup in a way, in a manner sort of like an insurance policy or not a social lubricant, but a business lubricant to help a transfer of technology. And so I think what I'm hearing in your comments now and some that Sam made before this, before we started recording, was that we're beginning to see in a more IP-centric economy, which we've heard about, but really coming to fruition in the sense that it's now not the product, it's now not the technology, it's not the product, it's not the marketing that's driving the deal. It may be the intellectual property itself, which I suppose is I will date myself perhaps when I say this. There was something called if you're watching video, you can sort of see that anyway. But there was something called the fourth wave. This sort of Alan Toffler comment, which is the sort of the societal equivalent of Internet 3 or whatever, Internet 4, whatever.
Three, yeah.
But I think what we're now beginning to see is U.S. economy version 2.0 or version 3.0, where instead of IP playing the laggard in the insurance policy, it's driving the deal. Is that where we're going with this talk, or you guys are going with this talk? And it better be. Kidding.
Well, I will certainly ask questions going that way, but of course I'll let the speakers say how they're experiencing the things themselves. But it's really things that I experience myself in my practice as a private practitioner, with either small companies driving all of the fundraising through the IP, to large companies buying out other companies based mostly on the IP, and then business decisions made mostly on the IP. So it's all around, it's everywhere. And I can't wait to hear the speakers actually. So
what does it mean? I'm not letting you off. I'm not going to let you off the hook that quickly, because it sounds like actually a relevant topic. What does it mean when intellectual property drives the deal? What does it mean for product development? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? We're all on IP, and so we love it. But as a practical matter for society, you could say it's the insurance policy driving the purchase of the house, right? No. Let me buy the house. Let me buy the land. Then I'll tell you what the insurance policy ought to be. If you instead said to me, hey, if you doubled your insurance policy, you could save 30% on it. So why don't you buy a house that's twice as big than you really need? I almost pulled off that, I think I almost pulled off that analogy. So that would not necessarily be a good thing. So why is technology, and particularly IP, leading the deal a good thing?
Well, first of all, I mean, for smaller companies that really need to be coming up with new technology, new ideas quickly, because they don't have enough money and they need to survive from month to month. Their runway is short. So they actually are innovating at a pace that is way faster than large companies. And the fact that these companies do not die out, but actually receive funding and are bought, that can join other companies, and that the driver of the IP being most of the value inside the deal, that really helps. I think, you see.
You and I are in the same business. And so I can fairly say this to you and everyone listening, or the other, actually it'll be us again, but when we listen to it again, this will ring true, which is that we have both seen companies, startups particularly.
Yep.
And by the way, we're like way off track from your panel, but we're fleshing out the topic, and then you can bring it back to reality when we get close to the end of this, which should be in about 2 hours. We've both seen companies who have, and you've seen not inventors, usually CEOs of startups, who said, usually there's a group of them, because there's always a group conversation around this. Well, we knew we wanted to be in the sort of the content management space, or the X or Y or Z space. And so we got online with our patent guy or patent woman, whoever it was, and we searched for where there were no patents, and we decided that's where we were going to come up with our product. And every time you hear that, you just cringe. It's like, no, please. No. Do you have a good idea? Will people buy this? Is there a product there? And then we'll come in and help you do the.
That's a nice step in the process, but that's a very small step that some people may even skip sometimes.
Yeah, it puts the cart before the horse.
Yeah,
So I know I'm dragging you away from, I think, the topic here, but it's a tangent. Oh, yeah, I got that in, tangential. It's here we go.
David, I just want to interject real quick. Something I'm seeing in my industry that I think sort of supports what you guys are saying is we're getting a lot more interest in financial institutions purchasing patent data to support their other decisions. They actually don't care about the patents at all, what it protects, where it can be litigated. They're purchasing that data to make a sort of a better educated decision. So they're about to underwrite a company or invest in one. But patent filings show that this company continues to file applications in, let's say, a country where we have sanctions in the U.S. That's a yellow flag that actually would require forensic accountants and some other really expensive people to get to in another way. But through patent data, you can actually go, hey, this is something I really need to dig into before I make this decision. I think that's another sort of indicator that IP is becoming more important for these sorts of decisions. That's a little different than what you were talking about, but certainly another angle.
No, I agree. And I don't this panel is going to be an upbeat, positive thing, and we should do nothing other than smile about it and use superlatives when we discuss it. But it's nice to know. It sounds like the sort of the gist of it was the IP team is becoming more and more prominent in the deal. And the sort of the next logical step from that is that IP is beginning to lead the deal. Now that might be a stretch, and I don't think they're going to say that. But perhaps that's something to keep an ear out for or an eye out for at the meeting.
But I think that, again, from experience, and we might hear fun stories. I mean, they've told me some bits and parts that I don't want to spoil that they're going to talk about. But the fact that from experience now in the due diligence process for any kind of transaction, I hear clients saying, well, there's actually two parts to the due diligence. There's the fun part where we do a deep dive into the IP, the technology. We want to understand like what has been filed, why, what's the market, where are the other competitors, and like all the intelligence around like where is this business going and what's the strong points and everything. And then there's the second part of the due deal, which is the boring part, the corporate stuff. And like they're kind of doing a separation between the two sections of the due diligence process. And I see more and more that the real part where the decisions are made about will we do this deal or not is on the IP side. Not joking.
All right. So
the due diligence tends to be very straightforward on the financial side, right? Like it's very rare that you give up on a deal because there was an undisclosed liability, but on the IP side, it's much more likely you're going to find something you didn't know. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Well, so wait a minute. So again, I'm going to play old school here. So that all sounds good, but are we confusing, i.e. you, confusing, or the panelists confusing IP and product, or IP and technology and product? Because I know up here in humble Boston, where we see a lot of startup deals, and you guys do too, the investors they will start going down the rabbit hole of the IP, but often there are several in the room who will say, wait a minute, let's talk product here. What is the market? What is the product? How is the product going to be made? What are the costs? And sort of the boring sort of block and tackle bits. And then it's a discussion of, okay, now we get it. And why do you think they'll eat the dog food, so to speak, which is why will the product sell? What are the next generations going to be? How are you going to meet all that? How are you going to, as an investor, get our money back, et cetera, et cetera? And then somebody walks in and says, and this obviously is the equivalent to the due diligence, oh, by the way, in case somebody encroaches on your market, do you have IP to block them? So to me, the IP again is, and I don't want to poo-poo what I do, nor what you do, nor what Sam does, but the IP is often the insurance policy, and yet Vincent, as you explained it, it's sounding like it's driving the deal, which is crazy, except if you're IBM's licensing arm or your Qualcomm's licensing arm or TI's licensing arm, then we can talk about large portfolios that are essentially a lot of big sticks, as opposed to carrots. And your answer, sir?
Yeah, And I think that the discussion about the product and what it's doing and what's going to be its place in the market and what are the next generations going to do is the first discussion that they have before they decide to go ahead and make an offer and then open the due deal. So of course that's the main thing they're going to discuss at first to see if there's interest at all. But once that discussion has been had with an NDA prior to discussing that, of course, but when the due deal really starts and you say, well, now we understand the product, I think it fits within our strategy, business development strategy. Now we're going to do the due deal. That's where the IP becomes really, really important, because most of the times your great product is not the only one on the market. Like there's probably more than one option for a company to be bought or for a technology to be acquired. And the reason that they probably chose one is sometimes, and I have seen it, because the IP in place is strong. It had a strategy around it. So it was not about just, oh, they filed patents. Oh, why? Was this even useful? Like, why? But then, no, that's what the IP strategy was all about. This is how we dealt with the source code of the software side of the product. We filed patents for this and this because it had a strategic impact on such market. And when there's something that's been thought about, that's been put in place, that is there, buyers will go to that company as a first pick. And I've seen a lot of investors saying, well, we receive a lot of, pitch decks from a lot of companies, and sometimes for the same market, same product. But given two choices that kind of look like good opportunities, we'll go with the one with the better IP.
Right, and a reason for that could be that if you've decided, as you said, you like the product, you like the market, it's consistent. If it's an acquisition position, it's consistent with the trajectory of the acquirer. Once you've decided that, is there at least fundamental or basic IP, not fundamental, basic IP in place to protect sort of the investment?
Yeah.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, we're not just talking patents, right? We're talking, do you own your software, or did you accidentally use a bunch of open source code that is going to cause a problem? Your copyrights, trademarks, to the extent you have trade secrets, are you protecting them appropriately? I think one great thing about our panelists is they work with they're part of organizations that have very sophisticated IP practices across the board, and I'm excited to hear what they might have to say about some of these other types of IP that you think about in a transaction.
True. But at least my thought here, not necessarily the correct thought, but at least to finish the thought, was that it was that if you buy a stronger portfolio, I think what we all mean on a stronger patent portfolio specifically, is that it gives you a chance not only to protect your flank, as copyright does, as trade secret does. But again, copyright and trade secret tend to be fairly narrow. They're sort of form-fitting, if you will, when it comes to protection of the product. Patents give you a chance of blowing that out, and that goes to Vincent's comment, which is a broad portfolio gives you a chance of blowing out of the water the other companies who are, or at least cross-licensing, and therefore bringing down a settlement or achieving a settlement if you're approached by another big player who's in the same space. So, okay. Have we tortured this issue? And having tortured it, do you guys want to try to bring back where we were about 10 minutes ago when the audience,
I did my best there, David, a second ago. I really do think all these topics are sort of potential fair game for the panel. I think Vincent is going to do a really great job of eliciting some really interesting comments for our panelists, but we don't want to spoil anything. So we're just excited to hear what they have to say too.
Boy, that's excellent. Yeah, Vincent.
And I think that we're not going to have enough time actually to get through all the questions, because having those panelists out there, what I want to do with my job as the moderator is to be as absent as possible and let them talk.
Yes.
So I really want.
We like you, Vincent, but we really want to hear from them, right?
I know, right?
Well, we kind of like you, yeah.
So if we can actually get them on a trail where they start just rebounding on the other comments, and then they just have a discussion like they're just the three of them in the room discussing the things that they like.
Yeah.
That's what I want to achieve with this panel, and that's why.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, and that's the kind of pressure I'm putting on me, but I know that the pressure is high, so.
Well, it's like the dinner host. You want to get people talking and get out of the way. But I got to say, there's a podcast I had done before I'm dusting back off called Failure, the Podcast. And if you don't succeed, we'll have you as a guest on that one. You could talk about where a panel discussion can go wrong.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a very nice plan B, so thanks.
Okay, gentlemen. Sam Wiley, Vincent Bergeron, this is Dave Powsner over here. We will look forward to, number one, publishing this podcast so we all have something to listen to on our next commute, and maybe a few others will listen. And I'll look forward to seeing you both in person in October, probably 16th or 17th. 16th, I think, is the Sunday, and it goes through the 18th or 19th.
18, 19.
Yeah, San Francisco. So be there or be square.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.